Hello and welcome to this next video in a series looking at the parts of the face. This video we're going to look at the ear. The ear is something probably that doesn't get quite enough attention, and not that it's something necessarily that we want to work up or put a lot of detail into. But we have to have some awareness of it and some of the subtleties of it so that we get its position correct, and that so that, as I said, that we don't work it up too much. It's also very important the ear becomes an important part and its position becomes an important part if we're doing someone more in profile too. Just a reminder to think about its position in terms of where it falls in the classical proportions, is that it falls, the helix of the ear, or the top of the ear, just goes over the eyeline, and the lobe of the ear touches in line with the nose. So they're the first things. The other aspect that we've got to think about is when we are dealing with someone in profile, its position there, and that's where we go from the tip of the nose to the back of the head and find our point of 5, 3. And so the golden section, and that gives us the position of the auditory canal, that point that where the sound goes into our ears. So we can then work off those proportions to work out approximately where the ear is, so that we don't push it too far forward or push it too far back. That's sort of the point to think about. In terms of looking at the shape of our ear, is that there is great variance in that, and it's looking for that usually the ears have a point where they come out here the most, out this way if we're looking at this side of an ear, and that point where it then will come in and then belly around into the lobe, and whether that lobe joins on completely or comes up more. So it's these sort of two key areas that we should be observing. Sometimes that's more pointed and doesn't come out as much. There's all those variations of the shape of the ear. The other main thing that we should think about when we're looking at the ear is that it is made up of a series of edges that peter out. So when we were talking about that line between the top and bottom lip, and I talked about doing it heavier and lighter and heavier and lighter, this here we're indicating, I'll say, lost and found edges here. And that's what we've got to think about in the ear, is that it is really just a series of lost or found, if we talk about up here, and lost edges, found edges, etc., etc. A lot of those lost and found edges are lost and found because of shifts of colour, but there are some key ones that are then shifts of tone. So primarily sometimes up in here in the helix of the ear, and then where the auditory canal is often where the biggest shifts of tone are, and that the rest can often be just subtle shifts, as I said, of colour. I wouldn't introduce too much colour into the ears, remembering that it is in that sort of that central third sector which often has more of a bias towards the reds. But there's sort of, it's these two aspects of tone and colour that we must be aware of. What I would suggest, again, is working on either looking at life, or as I am here right now, looking in a mirror. Of course, I'm just looking at my ear slightly on the side. And this time what I am concentrating on is I am thinking about massing an edge here that is indicative of my ear. And looking at how my ear goes in there, and I have these little pixie knobs up there, and then my ear goes in and around there. Here you've got then the dark of my hair. That creates a contrast there in this light that I'm looking at. And then defines into the dark where the auditory canal is. And then we've got the dark of my beard. We then have a dark there. Start to refine the shape of that dark through there. And I also have a little dark there, but otherwise everything is much the same tone. We might just go in with a slightly stronger dark edge through there, just to give it a little bit more and introduce just a little bit more of a dark in there to give that sense. Of that, and we shall then just look for then those couple of highlights that I can see. But in terms of tone, that's about as many shifts as I'm able to observe in my ear. I can see other edges around through here, but they would be primarily shifts, as I said before, of colour. I can see a shift of redness through to yellowness through to here. And again, similar shifts of yellow through to red in areas through here. But if you start to put them in as shifts of tone, and we'll start to maybe introduce some of those, is that we're starting to get an ear that's very busy and probably too much information. Yeah, it starts to look a bit messy. So be observing these lost and found edges, which we can talk about as having like a line in them in the ear. What could be good practice in terms of looking at the shapes for ears is to be doing blind contours, which would be a good one in terms of you doing them in the mirror, because the ears would be made up of a number of blind contours that you could be finding and going around and around and around. This would be a good one also for those of you interested in working in colour. Do some observations in colour and be thinking about, as again, controlling those shifts of colour but maintaining the tone. Good luck, and I look forward to seeing what you've been up to.